morning, Hilton Herons. I hope you all are ready to face the day with a positive attitude and set out to make great choices. Before we start our morning announcements, we will take a moment to stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing arise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea.
From the first Africans arriving in Hampton to the signing of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, African Americans have been on an arduous journey for racial equality. Today, you will hear the stories of several individuals who lived, worked, and fought for racial justice right here in Newport News. Ordinary people just like you, just like me. These individuals are heroes. Some of them gained that status by actively resisting the apartheid-like legal structure of segregation through litigation and social protest. Others challenged the system by shattering the status quo by becoming the first African Americans in this city to hold elected offices. Still others used their time and talent to establish business and medical practices and to build housing opportunities in their own communities. Along the way, they were continuously met with violent opposition, legal losses, and humiliating defeat. But through it all, our heroes stood strong, stood tall. They stood for justice. Hear their stories.
There is a strong connection between racial justice and education. Historically, teaching in the Black community is a revolutionary act. Blacks continue to learn and teach despite the danger it placed them in. Though African Americans have gained so much through the access to education, the road to equal education has been a long one. More than ever, it is important to highlight the achievements of Black educators in Newport News. Not only is it crucial to give African American educators their long overdue recognition, but it also reminds us of how far we've come and how far we have to go. Dorothy R. Watkins was devoted to her students at Booker T. Washington Elementary, but she was also devoted to working to give her fellow teachers a voice. She was an officer of the Newport News Teachers Association, of which all Black educators in the city were members, blocked as they were from white professional organizations. When that group learned that Newport News Black teachers received less pay than white teachers, they decided to sue. Watkins volunteered to file the suit under her name because she knew she would soon be married, and married women were barred from teaching anyway. Her case was endorsed by the NAACP, which lent its top legal team of Thurgood Marshall and Oliver Hill to the cause. Watkins won her case 2 steps forward, but sacrificed her career 1 step back. Black educators would receive the same pay as white educators, but Watkins was fired along with other leaders of the Teachers Association. We owe a debt to our forebears in education who pushed their students to do better, but also push their profession into the future and open doors for the next generations. Forebearers such as Norris B. Clark, one of the city's first principals, and Luttrell F. Palmer, the first principal of Huntington High and an educator respected statewide for his innovative curriculums. To tap a student's unlimited potential is a powerful talent that was possessed by school teachers such as Inettie Edwards and Sarah Whittington, guidance counselor Effie Mae Green, and children's librarian Vivian Miller. For centuries, Black educators poured into students their knowledge, confidence, and racial pride. They stood for justice.
Marcus Garvey is quoted as saying that a people without knowledge of their past, history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. In West Africa, the person assigned to keep the culture and history of a tribe or village was called a griot. The griot passed down the history through the oral tradition of storytelling. Honoring the struggles of our ancestors while bravely forging into our future is necessary to maintain the strength and vitality of a community. A teacher and the first African American woman to serve on the National Education Association's Board of Directors, Carrie Riggins Brown dedicated her life to the education of children at Booker T. Washington Elementary School. As a neighbor and friend of civil rights attorney J. Thomas Newsom, Brown witnessed his many clients and local dignitaries coming and going from his home. She recognized it for the community hub that his home was. When the house was abandoned, she rescued it and then established the Newsom House Foundation to restore it. She devoted the rest of her life to her vision of turning Lawyer Newsom's home into a museum and community center. Upon her death, Carrie Brown willed her estate, the Newsom House, and her own home to the city of Newport News so that the Southeast community would have a place to preserve, study, and celebrate its history. Other modern-day griots include Lillian Lovett, who continued Carrie Brown's vision of transforming the Newsom House into a museum and cultural center. Gregory Cherry, who similarly rescued from destruction the former home of James A. Fields. Today we honor three amazing culture keepers who recognize that there is no more powerful force than a people rooted in their history. They stood for justice.
Entrepreneurship is crucial to fighting social and racial injustice. The period after the Civil War saw a sharp rise in the number of Black-owned businesses as they attempted to overcome some of the inequities created by the institution of slavery. Many Black men and women defied great odds to establish their own businesses. When faced with few work opportunities and a high degree of job instability, many Black business owners took matters into their own hands. They used their independence and income to support their community using resourceful and ingenious methods. Shake off, thank God, take courage, and journey on. Born a slave, Reverend Smith A. Howell was the preacher at Wesley Grove Christian Church. As a minister, he witnessed firsthand the difficulties faced by his community and sought to alleviate some of those issues directly. Through the establishment of the Sons and Daughters of Peace, Penny Nickel and Dime Savings Bank in 1905, S.A. Howell and his board offered loans and financial stability otherwise unavailable to African Americans in Newport News. Other entrepreneurs from the Southeast community include John H. Ridley, was a founding member of the Crown Savings Bank in 1908. He was an elder at Carver Memorial Presbyterian Church, which stood on the land he donated. Dr. Charles C. Smith Sr. owned and operated Smith's Pharmacy, opening in 1941. This business was a community center, with Smith often opening his doors to African American pharmacy students in need of on-the-job experience. Owner-operators of the Night and Day Supermarket, Robert and Mary Britt, offered employment and empowerment to many young African Americans of the Southeast. This was more than a place to shop. It was an essential element of the community. The Cook brothers brought their family business of undertaking to the Newport News area in the 1890s from Richmond. This business is still family owned and operated here in the Southeast community today. William Ward Pickett offered his beachfront property near his home as a place of refuge and relaxation to African American residents of the city while managing his tailor shop for 45 years. Owner and operator of the Newport News Star for 25 years, Matthew Lewis was also a lawyer who worked to support African American political efforts in the United States. Lewis was amongst a small group of African Americans that held local offices despite racial prejudices, acting as a United States Customs inspector for many years. They stood for justice.
Racism in medicine is rooted in American slavery. Since arriving as slaves, African Americans have received the worst health care. Doctors and scientists were involved in creating and perpetuating lies of racial inferiorities and stereotypes that were routinely taught in U.S. medical schools. Black bodies were used for unethical experimentation. But by providing accessible health care to those in need, African American physicians and other healthcare professionals became beacons of hope for their communities. Still, they had to overcome tremendous obstacles to care for their community. Like Dr. George Cypress, who was the first practicing African American pediatrician on the peninsula and served as the chief of pediatrics at Fort Eustis's Hospital and Whitaker Memorial Hospital. Despite these credentials, Riverside would not allow him to practice at their hospital. Dr. Cypress sued the hospital for racial discrimination. He won the case, opening the doors to racial equality within medical establishments. He became a nationally recognized expert on sickle cell anemia and served in many medical associations. He was not alone in his dedication to the community. Other medical trailblazers were Dr. C. Waldo Scott, a well-known surgeon and community leader who was the first African American appointed to the Newport News School Board post-Reconstruction. Dr. William Dickerson, one of the 4 doctors that formed the first and only African American hospital in Newport News, Whitaker Memorial Hospital. Carrie C. Bolden, the only school nurse for all the African American schools in Newport News from 1916 until 1922. She was devoted to the success of Whitaker Memorial Hospital, organizing many fundraising events and campaigns. Dr. Norman Lassiter, the first African American dentist in Newport News and founding member of the Old Dominion Dental Society. He also helped strike down Newport News' Dead Line Law, which banned African Americans from living north of 28th Street. They stood for justice.
Using the judicial system to secure the civil rights of African Americans was another strategy used to combat racial discrimination. Our next category of heroes are civil rights activists who are dedicated to securing equal opportunity for African Americans through litigation. Unlike their counterparts in the national civil rights movement, their accomplishments have largely gone unnoticed. However, these men and women were integral to achieving social equality in Newport News. Newport News has long been a wellspring for individuals seeking to use the law to find justice and equality. James Apostle Fields transformed himself from a slave to the city's top lawyer. Fields served with distinction in the post of Commonwealth's attorney from 1887 to 1891, and later as assistant Commonwealth's attorney. As congressional Reconstruction ended and the power of the abolitionist-based Republican Party waned, Fields and many other local African Americans holding political office found their positions assaulted by those men who had held power before the Civil War. Fields held onto his office as Commonwealth's attorney only by the strength of his character, sterling reputation in the courtroom, and a near riot in the city when he was almost removed from office by white Democrats seeking to literally whitewash local government. In the midst of this, James A. Fields was a representative of Ward County in the state legislature, elected to serve in 1889, and was able to amass enough property to become the wealthiest African American in Newport News. His legacy is carried on today by those that challenge barriers and seek justice for those that cannot always speak for themselves, such as graduates of Howard University's law school, J. Thomas Newsom, W. Hale Thompson, and L. Marion Poe, who fought for the voting rights of African Americans, established local chapters of bar associations, fraternal orders, and advocated for education. Newsom was a champion for the construction of the much-needed Huntington High School and opened his home as a center for the community. W. Hale Thompson worked to end racial discrimination in the Newport News public library system and to represent African American clients in a world that often did not look past the color of their skin as a member of the NAACP's legal staff. And finally, the first African American woman to be admitted to practice at the bar in Virginia, L. Marion Poe, was inspired by Newport News attorney J. Thomas Newsom. She was a founding member of the city's NAACP organization and acted as its secretary for many years. They stood for justice.
During Reconstruction, approximately 2,000 African Americans held public office at all levels of government. However, African Americans have never achieved representation in government proportionate to their population numbers. Only 12 African Americans have served on the Newport News City Council, and 15 African Americans have represented this area in the state legislature. Electing more African Americans to office is pivotal to achieving racial equality. Political representation means African Americans' voices can be heard. Newport News has been served by visionary political leaders that have served as inspirations to others. Jesse Ratliff, who is one of my personal heroes, is an example of a pioneering political leader. Ratliff founded the Peninsula Business College in 1952 to offer a business education that would allow those enrolled a way to advance in business opportunities. However, Ratliff saw the lack of local economic opportunities her graduates faced and entered politics to remedy it. She ran and was elected to Newport News City Council in 1970, becoming the first African American and first woman to be elected to City Council. In 1986, she once again became a pioneer by serving as the first African American and only woman mayor of Newport News. Throughout her political career, she strove for economic advancement and community revitalization in Newport News, which included improvements to the Southeast community and the construction of the Jefferson Lab in the Oyster Point area. Additional visionary political leaders that have blazed the trail for those to follow include W. Henry Maxwell, who pastored Ivy Baptist Church for more than 40 years, in addition to serving in the General Assembly, first as a state delegate and then as a state senator. Daisy Morris fought for African Americans and women's voices in politics. She became the first African American and first woman elected as the Democratic Party committeewoman for her ward. Annie B. Daniels, better known to all as Madam Daniels, tirelessly worked to support African American involvement in the political process. She hosted campaign events for candidates and raised funds for people to pay their poll taxes. They stood for justice.
Community advocates can be described as compassionate warriors. They are the heart of a community. They dedicated their lives to caring for the everyday needs of residents by raising funds, organizing groups, and rallying political influencers. In short, They got the job done. Mary Church Terrell describes advocacy this way: lifting as we climb, onward and upward we go, struggling and striving and hoping that the buds and blossoms of our desires will burst into glorious fruition ere long. One woman who lived her life by Terrell's edit was Juanita Payton. She was president of the Virginia State Federation of Colored Women's Clubs, whose motto is lifting as we climb. Payton believed wholeheartedly in the importance of Black women's clubs and their role in the lifting of humanity. Despite advanced degrees from Juilliard and the Chicago School of Music, Payton chose service. Any given day, she could be seen accompanying needy children to doctor's appointments, eyeglass fittings, or buying them shoes and clothing. Payton didn't have any first to her name or major accomplishments on her resume, but to every child she helped, she is a hero. Other women who fought to give a chance to the most destitute in their community were Norfleet Downing Gross, Effie Ash, and Ella Spratley. They were steadfast supporters of federal assistance programs for housing and health care. One particular family has made giving back a tradition across generations. When Solomon Travis Sr. saw that the children in his neighborhood had no school, he sought to rectify this wrong by raising funds and building a school from the ground up. His son, Solomon Travis Jr., the founder and champion of labor unions, fought for continued success of Whitaker Memorial Hospital. His foster son, George C. Austin, the first city's African-American chief of police, was as dedicated to helping prevent someone from going wrong as he was to making arrests. They stood for justice.
African Americans have always had a conflicted existence in the United States. While we love and lay claim to the land of one nation under God with liberty and justice for all, these very principles of democracy have continued to exclude us. The poet Langston Hughes described his own disillusionment of the American dream in the poem, "Let America Be America Again."
No peace! No peace! No peace!
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from home.
Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain, seeking a home where he himself is free. America never was America to me. Let America be the dream, dreamer's dream. Let it be that strong land of love, where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. It never was America to me. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath.
But opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air that we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free.
Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark? And who are you that draws your veil across the stars?
I am the poor white, fooled and pushed apart.
I am the Negro bearing slavery scars.
I am the red man, driven from the land.
I'm the immigrant clutching the hope I seek.
and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak.
I am the young man full of strength and hope.
Tangled in that ancient endless chain of
profit, power, gain, of grab the land, of grab the goal, of grab the ways of satisfying need.
Of work the men, of take the pay, of owning everything for one's own greed. I am the farmer, bondsman to the soil. I am the Negro, servant to you all. I am the people, humble, hungry, mean, hungry yet today, despite the dream, beaten yet today.
Oh, pioneers, I am the man who never got ahead, the poorest worker bartered through the years.
Yet I am that one who dreamt our basic dream in an old world while still a serf of kings who dreamt a dream so strong, so brave, so true that even yet it mighty daring seems.
In every brick and stone, in every furrowed turn that made America the land it has become. Oh, I'm the man who sailed those early seas in search of what I meant to be my home.
For I'm the one who left dark island shore in Poland's plain and England's grassy lea, and torn from black Africa's strand, I came to build a homeland of the free. The free? Who said the free? Not me. Surely not me.
The millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay.
For all the dreams we've dreamed, all the songs we've sung, all the hope we've held, all the flags that we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay, except the dreams that's almost dead today.
Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet and yet must be, the land where every man is free. The land that's mine, the poor man's, the Indians, Negroes, me who made America.
Whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain. From those who live like leeches on the people's lives, we must take back our land again, America. Oh yes, I said it plain. America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be. Out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft and stealth and lies, we, the people, must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains and endless plain, all the stretch of these great green states, and make America again.
But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest for right.
Today, we have paid tribute to the heroes of the Southeast community. While their stories have ended, their mission continues. We, the leaders of today, must learn from these lessons in history. We must pick up the torch and bravely march on. In answering this high calling, we vow to finish the work of freedom's first generation. We will ring the bells of liberty and justice loud and clear. We will forever stand for justice.
Southeast, come on, yeah, fighting for our brothers, sisters, and our streets. Southeast, fighting for our brothers, sisters, and our streets. Heroes of our yesterday, they were told to separate, carrying the hope of a better day. and our streets. Southeast, Southeast. Fighting for our brothers, sisters, and our streets. Southeast, Southeast. Fighting for our brothers, sisters, and our streets.
This song is dedicated to the heroes of the Southeast community.
Those who fought for justice, peace, and equality.
People like John Ridley,
Annie Daniels,
J. Thomas Newsom,
Harry R. Brown,
C. Waddle Scott,
Jesse Radley,
William Dickerson,
Livian Lovey,
James A. Field,
and to everyone who sacrificed their present for our future.